How did the Great Depression bring America to its knees? Nobody in the bustling streets of New York on that bright October morning could have guessed how close the country was to falling apart. The stock markets were roaring, fortunes seemed to multiply overnight, and Americans believed they were living in a new age of endless prosperity. But beneath the glittering surface, the foundations of that prosperity were already cracking. And within days, the illusion would shatter so violently that it would send shockwaves through every home, every farm, every factory, and every heart across the nation. Long before anyone realized that the United States was marching straight into the darkest economic catastrophe in its history, a collapse so deep and so devastating that it would reshape society, government, and the very idea of what it meant to be American. The strange thing about the Great Depression is that it didn't begin with a famine, a war, or a natural disaster. It began with confidence, too much of it. Throughout the 1920s, ordinary Americans were convinced that the stock market was the fastest ticket to wealth. People poured their savings into stocks, and when that wasn't enough, they borrowed money, hoping the rising market would cover their debts. Anyone with a few spare dollars felt like a financial genius. Companies exaggerated their values, newspapers praised the unstoppable economy, and politicians declared that prosperity was permanent. The nation was sleepwalking on a financial tightrope, believing there was no chance of falling. But the numbers told a different story. Underneath the optimism, the economy was dangerously unbalanced. Factories produced far more goods than Americans could afford to buy. Wages stagnated while corporate profits soared. Banks were lending money they didn't have. Millions of Americans were living on credit, convinced that tomorrow would always be brighter. The warning signs were everywhere, but no one wanted to see them. After all, nothing ruins a good party like someone pointing out the cracks in the floor. Then came October 29, 1929, a day that would be remembered forever as Black Tuesday. When the market opened, panic spread like wildfire. Prices plummeted. Investors sold whatever they could. Phones rang non-stop, brokers shouted, and the ticker machines fell hours behind because the chaos was too fast to record. By the end of the day, billions of dollars in wealth had evaporated. Strangers walked the streets in silence, trying to understand how everything could disappear in a single day. Some hoped the panic would pass. Others sensed that something much darker had begun. What followed wasn't just a financial crash. It was a chain reaction that touched every corner of American life. Banks, already weak, collapsed by the thousands because they had gambled with depositors' money in the stock market. People rushed to withdraw their savings, only to find that the money wasn't there. Families who had spent years building their lives lost everything in a single afternoon. The shock spread to city halls, farms, factories, schools, everywhere. Factories shut their doors. Companies fired workers by the millions. Breadlines stretched across city blocks. Children went hungry. Farmers watched prices drop so low that crops weren't worth harvesting. The land itself turned against them when years of poor farming practices collided with drought, creating the Dust Bowl, a swirling nightmare of black clouds that buried homes, choked animals, and forced families to flee west with nothing but hope in their pockets. The Depression didn't just crush bank accounts. It crushed dreams. Men who once worked proud jobs stood in endless lines for a bowl of soup. Women took in laundry or sewing to feed their families. Children picked through garbage bins for scraps. Pride, once the backbone of American identity, cracked under the weight of desperation. The country that had once believed in unlimited opportunity was now struggling to survive each day with dignity intact. The government, at first, didn't know what to do. President Herbert Hoover believed in limited intervention. He hoped the economy would fix itself, like a storm that eventually clears. But storms don't fix ruined homes. They leave destruction behind. And as each month passed, the suffering deepened. Hoover was a brilliant engineer, a man who had saved millions from famine after World War I. Yet he found himself powerless against an economic force unlike anything the world had ever seen. His policies came too little, too late. Americans felt abandoned. As the Depression worsened, it exposed painful truths about American society. It revealed how fragile the financial system was, how millions lived close to the edge, and how deeply inequality had shaped the country. But it also revealed something unexpected: the incredible resilience of ordinary people. Families shared homes. Neighbors shared food. Strangers shared what little they had. Communities survived not through wealth or government help, but through kindness and collective strength. By 1932, the nation was desperate for change. That change came in the form of a man who couldn't walk without braces, Franklin D. Roosevelt. His calm voice, confident smile, and bold promises revived something Americans thought they had lost: hope. Roosevelt didn't pretend the crisis would vanish overnight. Instead, he convinced the nation that the fight could be won. He declared war on fear itself, insisting that the country could rebuild its future through courage and unity. Roosevelt's New Deal wasn't one policy, it was dozens. He closed collapsing banks temporarily, then reopened the healthy ones to restore public trust. He created jobs for millions through massive public projects: roads, bridges, dams, parks, all built by hands that had once been idle. He provided support to farmers, protected workers' rights, secured bank deposits, and introduced social reforms that reshaped the relationship between the American people and their government. The New Deal didn't end the Depression, but it stopped the bleeding and gave the nation a lifeline. For the first time in years, Americans looked forward rather than backward. Radios filled homes with Roosevelt's fireside chats, comforting millions with the sound of a leader who understood their struggles. Workers returned to factories. Children returned to school. Families began to dream again. The country slowly stood back on its feet, bruised but not broken. But the question remains: what truly brought America to its knees? It wasn't the crash alone. It wasn't the dust storms. It wasn't unemployment or hunger. It was the collapse of faith, the belief that the American dream was invincible. The Depression forced the nation to confront its vulnerability and rethink the systems it had trusted blindly. It revealed that success built on shaky foundations can crumble overnight, and that economic prosperity means nothing without stability, fairness, and safeguards. Ironically, the event that finally pulled America out of the Great Depression was not a domestic policy, but a global catastrophe: World War II. When war erupted in Europe and Asia, the demand for American weapons, vehicles, and supplies skyrocketed. Factories roared back to life. Millions enlisted or took wartime jobs. By 1942, the Depression was effectively over, replaced by a new challenge: fighting for global freedom. Yet, even as the war ended the Depression, the memory of that era lived on in every American who survived it. The scars remained: empty chairs at dinner tables, abandoned farms, lost fortunes, broken dreams. But so did the lessons. The Depression taught the country to value regulation, community, and collective responsibility. It taught leaders that government must act in times of crisis. It taught citizens that resilience is not an individual trait, it is a national one. In the end, the Great Depression didn't just bring America to its knees. It reshaped the nation entirely. It turned suffering into reform, fear into unity, despair into innovation. It forced a proud country to rebuild itself stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And it remains a powerful reminder that even the mightiest nations can fall, but what truly defines them is whether they rise again.